All right, let's get into a really fascinating topic, dry needling. You've probably heard of it, maybe even had it done. But how on earth can one tiny little needle manage to untangle a deep, painful muscle knot? Well, the answer isn't just about the muscle itself. It's about a massive conversation it starts with your entire nervous system. And we're going to unpack the surprising science behind how it all works. Okay, first things first, let's clear up a common point of confusion. You see needles, you think acupuncture, right? Well, while they look similar, dry needling and traditional acupuncture are totally different. Dry needling is based on Western medicine, and it's all about targeting specific muscular and nerve problems. Acupuncture, on the other hand, comes from traditional Chinese medicine, with the goal of moving energy, or qi, along pathways in the body. So to really get how the needle helps, we first have to understand what it's even aiming for. We're talking about that sore, stubborn knot in your muscle that just won't go away. Scientists have a name for it, a trigger point. Now, the best theory scientists have for what this knot actually is called the integrated hypothesis. You can basically think of it as a tiny patch of your muscle fibers getting stuck on. They're in a constant state of contraction, which creates this microscopic energy crisis. And this is where it turns into a really nasty, vicious cycle. See, that constant contraction squeezes the tiny blood vessels in the area, which chokes off the supply of oxygen and nutrients. When that happens, all these pain-producing and inflammatory chemicals start to build up. And guess what that chemical soup does? It tells the muscle to contract even more, which just keeps the whole miserable loop going and going. But here's where it gets really wild. You'd think practitioners are experts at finding the exact center of this knot, right? Well, research shows that even highly trained experts can be off by several centimeters when they try to pinpoint the exact same spot. So, that begs a huge question. If hitting a microscopic bullseye is pretty much impossible, what is the needle actually doing? Maybe the goal isn't to just mechanically break up the knot. Maybe something way more subtle and honestly way cooler is happening. And to find that answer, we need to zoom in. I mean, way, way in. Forget the muscle for a second. Let's look at what's happening at the cellular level, right around that needle. The key to this whole thing is a super fancy word, mechanotransduction. But don't worry, the idea is actually really simple. It's just the process your cells use to turn a physical force, like a little push or a pull, into a chemical message. It's how cells talk to each other, using touch. So when the practitioner gently rotates that needle, it's not just sitting there. It actually grabs onto the connective tissue fibers around it and winds them up, kind of like twisting spaghetti on a fork. This creates a very specific mechanical pull on everything it's touching. And that little physical tug is like an alarm bell for the cells right next door. They feel that pull, and they respond by releasing a flood of chemicals. The most important one here is a molecule called ATP. You might remember it as the basic energy currency for all life. Now, this is the absolute key to what happens next. That flood of ATP doesn't just hang around. It's immediately converted into something else, a chemical called adenosine. And adenosine, well, that is one of your body's own most potent, built-in painkillers and anti-inflammatories. And we are not talking about a tiny effect here. Get this, studies have measured a 24-fold increase in adenosine right there in the tissue during a needling session. So the needle is basically tricking the body into flooding the painful area with its own natural medicine. But the story doesn't end there. Not even close. That local chemical reaction is just the first message sent in a much longer conversation, one that goes all the way up the chain of command to your brain and then all the way back down. So the nerve endings in that area, they feel all this commotion, the mechanical pulling, the chemical release, and they shoot an urgent signal up the spinal cord directly to headquarters, your brain. Now, when that signal gets to the brain doesn't just register pain. It does something incredible. It activates a powerful, built-in pain control network. Think of it as the brain's own central command for managing and shutting down pain signals all over the body. And what does this command center do? It opens up the body's internal pharmacy and deploys the heavy artillery. We're talking about a powerful cocktail of neurochemicals, including endogenous opioids, which are literally the body's own version of morphine, plus things like serotonin and norepinephrine. This chemical cocktail then travels back down the spinal cord, where it acts like a master volume knob for your whole system. It intercepts the pain signals that are coming up from that trigger point and just turns the volume way, way down. Okay, so we've got local pain relief, we've got a system-wide brain response, but it gets even weirder. The simple physical action of the needle has some other really surprising effects on the tissue itself. Remember that spaghetti twisting thing? Well, that same mechanical pull can actually help remodel and soften stiff, unhealthy tissue, like old scar tissue. And, get this, it can even kickstart the healing process by telling nearby cells to start producing new type 1 collagen, which is the main building block for healthy tissue repair. This all leads to one of the most counterintuitive things you might see a physical therapist do. Why on earth would they put a needle in your hip to treat pain in your shoulder? I mean, that sounds completely crazy, right? Well, the science behind this is just brilliant. When a needle goes into a spot far away from your actual pain, it stimulates specific immune cells to release histamine. And histamine is the same chemical that's responsible for making you feel an itch. And here is the genius part. Your nervous system is wired to pay attention to new sensations. So when the brain gets this new, harmless itch signal from your hip, it shifts its focus. And by prioritizing the new itch, it actively turns down the volume on the old, chronic pain signal coming from your shoulder. It's a biological magic trick. You're basically creating a clever distraction to fool your own pain system. So when you put it all together, what have we really learned? That a tiny needle isn't just a tool for poking a sore muscle, it's actually a key that unlocks a whole cascade of your body's own incredible healing mechanisms, from local painkillers to a system-wide response from your brain, and even clever tricks that use an itch to block out pain. It's a powerful, complex conversation all started by the simplest of tools.